On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, did the Oklahoma City Thunder tip their hand about the starting lineup and why you should have no reservations about this Thunder team?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. On today's show, brought to you by Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're joined by Brendan Rabar at Brendan Rabar on Twitter to discuss the Oklahoma City Thunder falling to the Houston Rockets in the preseason, but making a statement in the first half that you should take away all reservations on this team, and potentially they tip their starting five. We'll also get you set for tonight's game against the New Zealand Breakers. But Brandon, Daily Thunder extraordinaire, 1077, the franchise Thunder After Dark Thunder Dream Team. Brandon, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited to have Thunder basketball back in OKC. First time that we've had a game in OKC since that Dallas series. So it feels like it's been a long time, although it was a really short off season. So just nice to have it back.
It's nice to have it back. It's nice to be sitting next to you talking hoops again. Brandon, we recapped this game for Thunder After Dark, Thunder Dream Team. You can go subscribe over there. Also subscribe to Locked On Thunder. I think that the biggest takeaway from this game happened in pregame and bled into the game whenever Mark announced the starters. This is something he typically does not do. He'll do it in the preseason. He will not do it in the regular season. But the Thunder start SGA, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. I think that should be their starting five, and I've claimed as much since they signed Hartenstein, but I know a lot of people want to see them start double bigs. What did you make of that being the first thing that the Thunder try whenever they're fully healthy? Because on Monday, they didn't have Shai, they didn't have Dort due to rest, and so they didn't start either Caruso or Hartenstein. And what did you make of how that lineup played on the floor?
I agree with you that this is the most likely starting lineup come opening night. And I know it's interesting because they open with the Nuggets. So if you're ever going to play Hartenstein possibly instead of Caruso, and if this is a liquid situation where it could be one or the other, then you would see Hart opening night. That said, I think it will be this lineup for most of the season. And this lineup defensively is just nuts to watch. Like you're basically just exchanging Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. Josh Giddey has a lot of strengths, but he wasn't, a great defender. Alex Caruso, on the other hand, is an elite defender, and we saw that tonight. Even though it's a preseason game, Alex Caruso did not play like it was a preseason game. His hands were everywhere. He had 2 blocks in like the first 3 minutes, had a bunch of deflections. This lineup, just the diversity, being able to have 2 elite perimeter defenders, the GMs named their top perimeter defenders as well as all these other categories earlier this week. And Alex Caruso was number 2 and Lou Dort was number 4. Having these 2 guys and then Chet behind them at the rim, and then also having Shai, who tied for the lead in steals last season, and J-Dub, a great defender himself, just the diversity with this lineup. And the Thunder talked about it when they traded for Alex Caruso, that he can guard the 4. Like he defended KD really, really well last year. And KD's a 7-footer. So if he can guard a 7-footer, like the diversity, what these guys can do up and down the lineup is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think that's what stood out the most today. Of like he can block Eamon Thompson, and then he can go and defend Şengün on a switch the next possession. Like the fact that you have someone like that who can defend everyone on the floor on an already very switchable defense, it just takes you to another level. Whenever offensively he can do so much, he's a much better cutter than Josh Giddey. He's a much better catch and shoot guy than Josh Giddey, and I think that he's a better connective passer than Josh Giddey. Giddey is who you want as a playmaker, as a setup guy, but like connectively, him as a passer isn't miles and miles ahead of Caruso as he is in other playmaking departments. So I just think that from top to bottom, Caruso just maximizes what this team was so good at. And that's why everyone is so high on this Thunder team. That's why this team is the way it is. I think that you mentioned that the Thunder are able to just frustrate you and boggle down your offense. And that's why I think that this starting five should be the one out there to set the tone, because you saw quickly how Mark can weave in and out of like double bigs now, then take them off, then play them together. Like he was able to blend Shai and Hartenstein so much that it felt like they played a lot of their minutes together without it being forced, without it being in the starting five, but they still worked it in there plenty in the first half. What that starting group does is it buys you time just in case maybe a couple shots don't go your way, they rim off, maybe your offense bogs down, maybe you have a few turnovers. That's what happened tonight. The Thunder were not crisp by any means offensively, and especially at the start of the game, they're not crisp. They still got off to a 12-2 run because the defense is just so tough and it's just so versatile, and you cannot really find a good matchup to where it's easy for you to get out, get deflections, get stops, and eventually have your offense turn it on.
Yeah, Mark said in post-game that he thought the offense was a little clunky, but he was really impressed by the defense in the first half. And the defense can win you a lot of games on nights where maybe, some of your shooting is off. Like Isaiah Joe tonight didn't shoot really well. There'll be nights like that where some of the best shooters don't shoot really well, but the defense can keep you in any game when you have these elite defenders like this. Like Shai can guard 1 through 3. Jalen Williams last year, we saw him guard Steph Curry well, but we also saw him guard Giannis last year. Like we saw him guard Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, like the diversity, we already talked about Alex Caruso, and then Lou Dort can guard 1 through 4. Like he can guard LeBron James. We see him guard point guards all the time. And then you have this elite rim protector back there with Chet. And whether Hartenstein starts, whether he comes off the bench, he's going to play a lot of minutes. These top 6 guys, those starters tonight and Hartenstein, are all going to play a bunch of minutes. And there's so many different lineups you can mix and match with these guys. And then with Case and Wallace, another great defender, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, all these guys coming off the bench. Mark Daigneault has a lot of options, and it's not just defensive. We talk so much about the defense for good reason, but all these guys can play on the offensive side as well. And that's what makes the Thunder so dangerous, is that they can be elite defensively, but the shooting, the playmaking, it's everywhere on this roster.
I think that the Thunder did such a good job of not overreacting to last year of, Hartenstein, yes, he's a bigger body. Yes, he's exactly what you need as a more physical, imposing big man threat. But man, he can still pass and he can still stretch the floor with that passing. And we'll see if that shooting comes around from beyond the arc or not. But regardless of that fact, like he still plays Thunder basketball. It's just in a 7-foot frame. And you look at that first half, which is all that really matters for this team, with all due respect to everyone who played in the second half. The first half was whenever you had your guys. And in that segment of the game where each team was playing and throwing their fastball, the Thunder outshot the Rockets at all 3 levels by a mile outside of the free throw line, where the Rockets did perform better, shooting 71% to the Thunder's 55. But 3-point shooting was 29% for the Rockets, 42% for the Thunder on more attempts than the Rockets shot. From the floor, the Rockets shot 36%. The Thunder shot 52%. And then the Thunder controlled the glass. They had more assists. They had more steals. They had more blocks. They had less turnovers. Like the Thunder did everything that you would want them to do in that first half and controlled the game in every way. And they led by 13 points at intermission. They withstood a Rockets run. They withstood some of their own offensive blemishes. And this is why we're saying they can clean things up within their own selves. Of like they had a few too many turnovers. They had a few missed free throws that would not happen. Brandon, this team is like the best in basketball. One of the best in basketball. You can talk about them or the Celtics.
Yeah, it is. And the Celtics, obviously, coming off a championship run, like the fact that, all these analysts, GMs, all these people that either follow the NBA or cover the NBA for a living are putting the Thunder right there with the Celtics. I mean, it says a lot about this Thunder team, just how deep they are. Like, they have all the things that you want. We talk about the defense. All these guys are two-way players. And they have the top end talent with Shai as an MVP candidate, the favorite for MVP according to the GMs. J-Dub and Chet, like budding stars, and then all these great role players. And the fit of Caruso and Hartenstein, it's just seamless. Like, this was the first night we saw the top 9 guys play together. Jay Will was out. Kenrich Williams was out. Other than that, everybody else played. And the Thunder just didn't skip a beat. I mean, these guys just fit. And that's one of the things that was talked about a lot with Caruso and Hartenstein, how they can fit on any team. And it's because they play smart basketball. They play the right way. They both play make for others. They both look for the right shot. They both score efficiently, and they both play great defense. And so adding these 2 guys to a team that won 57 games, the internal development from the young guys, those guys should get better. You add Caruso and Hartenstein, your defense gets better. Your 3-point shooting should get better. This team is a really, really good team, Rylan.
I think that you should take away all reservations and go all in on this Thunder team. I'll tell you why coming up. But first, I want to say right now, about our good friends over at Game Time, check out the Game Time app today to get started. Game Time is there for you because it's the best app for me to go and get tickets. I'll tell you why. Number one, I love their all-in pricing. I love the fact that whenever you turn on this feature, you see the exact price you're going to pay right up front. There's no surprises at checkouts. I also love the view from your seat. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy because, for example, I've only ever been to BOK once. This is my second time going. If I needed tickets to this game, I would be seeking out what's the best sight line, what's the best view available. And whenever you look at this, it's last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I love the fact that they're so confident in the fact that they will have the lowest tickets. If you somehow find a lower price ticket, they will give you 110% of the difference. That is crazy because Prize Picks is going to have you the lowest tickets guaranteed whenever you go download their app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions to apply. Again, create your account and use code LOCKEDONNBA today. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm Rylan Stiles. Joining me today is Brendan Rabar from Daily Thunder, 1077 The Franchise, and Thunder After Dark Thunder Dream Team. Brandon, this team is good, and they're top of the league good. And I think that there's still a pocket of fans who might be saying, are they being overrated? Are they being overvalued? Like, this team could be better than advertised. I don't really understand any reservation anyone has, and there are people that I really respect, like Locked On Mavs host Nick Angstead, who says that maybe the Thunder are not everything that this team is billed as, and a team that's going to run away with things in the West. Sure, the Western Conference is going to be very tough. It would be hard for anyone in the world to run away with it. But man, this was a 57-win team a year ago. They were a top 5 offense defense. Like, they checked all the boxes a year ago, and now they're a year older with more experience, and they replaced their worst starter by far, arguably their worst player who got consistent minutes, with Alex Caruso, and they fixed their glaring hole last year, which was the lack of front court depth. The fact that they went out there today and just on day one together in a real NBA game, shut down the Rockets completely offensively, I thought it was a very encouraging sign of perhaps this team is not only as good as advertised, but maybe we've been too timid with our predictions of, like, you and I have danced around. Could they win 60? Maybe. Like, this team, by all indications, is going to win 60 plus games because like you saw, like you said, Caruso, for example, he did not play like this was a preseason game. Can you imagine what it'll look like in a regular season game? Who do you trust to play, every single night and to play hard every single night in the NBA, in Adam Silver's NBA? I only really trust the Thunder to play every night, not load manage, not take nights off. And this team is so good, so deep, so talented. They almost won this game featuring, Usman Jang and Alex Dukas down the stretch. They just had a few rebounds not go their way. Like, this team is so good. And I'm all in now after 2 games, and I know it's preseason. This team will win 60 plus games, Brandon.
Yeah, it's just where's the weakness? Like when you look at teams, usually you're able to easily identify the strengths and the weaknesses of each team. And you get to the Thunder and you can list off all these strengths as we've done, but then you try to find a weakness. And last year, the two weaknesses that were repeated over and over were the lack of size. Okay, well, they addressed that in a huge way with Hartenstein, one of the best rebounders, one of the best rim protectors in the league, 7-footer. And youth and experience. Well, they got older by virtue of adding Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, to playoff vets. All the guys got a year older, and they added some playoff experience. They made it to the second round. They were one game away from making it to the Western Conference Finals. So the two weaknesses that were repeated last year, you can kind of check those off as well. They have an elite MVP player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like a lot of times it's like, okay, well, yeah, you're a great team, but a lot of times whoever has the best player will win. Well, the Thunder have SGA, who is number 2 in MVP voting last year, and he's the favorite to win MVP this year. I guess the one thing that I see sometimes is like a reliable second scoring option, but I think that anybody who follows this Thunder team believes that J-Dub is that guy. And I think that a third-year leap from J-Dub is coming. And we've seen a little bit of it. One thing that Mark Daigneault said that he'd like to see from J-Dub is more three-point shooting, like his volume to go up, because he believes that he can still stay really efficient and boost those three-pointers up. And we've seen that. He shot 6 3-pointers in the first half tonight. He shot 4 3-pointers in the first half Monday night. He only averaged 3.4 3-point attempts per game last year. So I just don't see the weaknesses. I see all the strengths. This is just a really, really good team. And I'm with you. Health permitting, this is a 60-win team on paper.
One of my only reservations about this team was, you clearly filled your starting 5 with Caruso, and you helped yourself there with boosting from Giddey. Yeah, you clearly filled, your front court woes, which it doomed you against Dallas because you were a minus $1 billion without Chet on the floor in a series that had a 0-point differential. And you look at this team and you say, well, you didn't quite, slam dunk your table setter for the secondary unit. Like that was still an area where that they came up short a bit last year in the playoffs, and they didn't have that like, hey, this is the guy. Because like you can point to Caruso as like that's the guy to replace your worst starter. You can point to Hartenstein as like that's the guy to shore up your front court depth. You can't point quite to just the one guy who's going to take up that mantle as like the table setter for the secondary unit. But through 2 games, Brandon, I mean, is it crazy to say that it's going to be Isaiah Hartenstein at the top of at the high post, whipping the ball around and getting guys quality looks? Did they do enough to just patchwork that weakness away, where it's like Hartenstein can facilitate in the high post, J-Dub can take another step as a playmaker, Caruso takes that step as a playmaker? Throw AJ Mitchell's hat in the ring of like, if all these guys can just do enough to figure it out, for these short minutes where you're not going to have Shai and you're not going to have someone else out there. Like, I think that the Thunder now have like really hit, like you said, all of their weaknesses from a year ago. And of course, there's no perfect team. Of course, new ones will pop up, but it's tough to find them right now. It's tough to project what's that weakness. And I was clinging to like, hey, they need a table setter. But I mean, Hartenstein looks every bit the part, plus what we've seen from those other guys.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The Thunder have very purposely gone out and drafted, traded for, and signed guys that can play make. Now, that doesn't mean that they're guys that, they're not Chris Paul, they're not getting 10 assists a night, but each one of them has that ability and looks for that, like seeks out the right pass and makes the extra pass. And Isaiah Hartenstein is one of the best passing bigs in the league. And, you don't have to have a point guard be that guy on the second unit. Like if Isaiah Hartenstein is going to get, 4 or 5 assists a night, kind of running things from the high post. I mean, obviously he's not Jokic, but Jokic as a big is the Nuggets' best playmaker. He's basically their point guard as a big. So in a secondary role off the bench, if you get a few assists a night from from Hartenstein. He's kind of setting the table. And if you have Jada playing with that second unit, the Thunder want to see Case and Wallace take on some more of that playmaking ability. We saw him throw a lob immediately when he came in and checked in tonight to Hartenstein. I think it's going to be kind of one of those, everybody does a little bit, and they don't necessarily need that second guy. They don't need the Robin to be the playmaker when they just have a bunch of guys being the playmaker. But I think you'll see J-Dub and Hartenstein carry a lot of that load besides Shai.
For as good as we can talk about the newcomers, and we have Caruso and Hartenstein, I think that the top three returners made massive strides tonight. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. Check out FanDuel today because the football season is well underway. A big showdown in Dallas this weekend with Red River, and it's a big return for FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Whether you're in the middle of a game for live lines or you're projecting the spread and the over-under and player props, they have it all for you at FanDuel.com. You can go there to get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Your first $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. And perhaps you're only an NBA fan. That's all you want to care about in terms of that's all you feel confident in betting on sports. Well, you can already bet on opening night where the Thunder are 2.5-point underdogs in Ball Arena against the Nuggets. They are the favorites to win the West, the second highest favorites to win the NBA championship. So you can go bet on those future bets as well as tonight. They're 37.5-point favorites against the New Zealand Breakers. That's a pretty big line. I might take the Breakers just because we don't know who will play for the Thunder, but you can go do it if you want to at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Brandon, the Thunder have been stellar, and it's been the leaps that you've seen their top three guys take that is almost the most encouraging. Starting with Chet Holmgren, I think that Holmgren has stood out the most over these first two games. He's been one of the two guys who have played both games for the Thunder so far, but the aggression from Holmgren offensively has been exactly what we've wanted to see. We were talking on this show the last few weeks about how that's his next step in his evolution as a player, is taking advantage of smaller matchups. He attacked the rim relentlessly, getting to the free throw line 8 times in the first quarter alone. Brandon, what did you see from Chet, and how did you like his game?
Yeah, that's what stood out to me too. We saw it Monday night against the Spurs. He went 5 for 5. They were all at the rim, very aggressive, and he was that same way tonight. Like, he was actively looking to go to the rim and attack the rim. And Shai and Dub were setting him up there. He had multiple lob attempts at the rim. You know, he was fouled on a couple of those. Mark Daigneault talked about it in the post game, just about how he's gotten stronger, and he's definitely better than he was last year. But his physicality, I think that we've seen him take it to the rim more. But also, I just think physically watching him, he looks stronger. Like, they talk about him being stronger, but he looks more physical, and he looks to be taking more contact and just driving it and initiating. So just watching him, not just what the numbers say, okay, he went 5 for 5 at the rim, he did this, he did that, but just watching him, he just looks so much more physical.
Yeah, he looks way better as a player, and he's someone who, like Aaron Wiggins highlighted as his most improved guy from camp, of who looks different or who looks better from a year ago. He highlighted Chet Holmgren, which is a welcome sign, as you need to see him and J-Dub take these massive strides. We can talk all day long about the depth and their rotation and the starters and Mark. At the end of the day, it's a star-driven league. You have for sure a #1 option on a title team. SGA has shown you in the playoffs in the biggest stages he can hit those clutch shots. He needs a #2. He needs a #3. Between Chet and J-Dub, they've got to get there offensively. They were not there quite offensively in their first go-around in the postseason. It looks promising so far for try #2. But with Chet, now blending with J-Dub, he's, I think, hit all the marks of what you want to see too. The biggest challenge from Mark publicly has been about J-Dub upping his three-point shooting, because his entire team has been the best three-point shooting team in the NBA percentage-wise last year, but not quite the volume you'd want from a team that can shoot the ball this way. Mark challenged him and Wiggins to get higher volume on their shot, even if you sacrifice a little bit of efficiency. The beautiful thing is you haven't really had to sacrifice much efficiency from either player. In this game, it was Williams who went 3 for 6 from three. And outside of one heat check, like these all still came with quality looks for J-Dub. And if you can get more threes on quality looks, which comes down to him just simply wanting to take them, it's a whole new level for him to reach again.
Yeah, one of the reasons that J-Dub and this team as a whole is so efficient is because they only take quality shots. They take smart shots and they pass the ball until they find the right shot. That said, I think there were a lot of times last year where J-Dub passed up on a three that he could have taken and could have made because he was looking for another shot or he was trying to share the ball. And it's a really small sample size, only 2 first halves. But I think we've seen in both of these games, J-Dub take some threes that he wouldn't have taken last year. And they were good threes. Like you said, they were high quality threes that he can make, but they weren't just like completely open or, he didn't have the exact space that he wanted or getting the defender to kind of rock a little bit backwards or whatever it was. And he was still taking those and making those so far in these 2 games. So that's encouraging because he's incredibly efficient. And I think that even if he doesn't take the best of the best threes, even if he's still just taking good threes, he's going to stay efficient. And this Thunder team, if they're shooting more threes from their best 3-point shooters, that efficiency and that scoring is just going to be better and better.
Brandon, every year, Shai's gotten better. Every year. You try to put a little cap on him of like, okay, that was a great year, but can he do even better? Like, he's a borderline all-star. Is that the best he can do? Okay, now he's an all-star. This certainly is where things even out. Now he's an all-star starter. Okay, this is it for Shai. And then he's top 5 MVP. Then he's runner-up MVP. Like, did Shai get even better after seeing him play in his preseason debut?
I think he did. And the reason why, the one thing that, we've all kind of said about Shai is like, man, but just think if he added like a 3-point shot, because he's so efficient and he will get whatever shot he wants in the mid-range. He will get whatever shot and finish it at the rim. And he can shoot from 3, but he likes his step back. He's great at it. He doesn't get a lot of catch and shoot opportunities. So you're like, okay, well, how can he up his volume and how can he shoot more threes and make more threes? Well, we saw tonight only 2 shots, but it was kind of the way that he did them. And it's like the confidence in which he just came up and shot. He had 2 pull-up threes, splashed both of them, defender in his face on both of them, and he shot over both of these guys. If he truly adds that to his game, I mean, it really can kind of take him to another level where he's even better. He improves on something every year. Like his whole game gets better, but it seems like there's always one thing where like, that's what he worked on this offseason. I'm not saying like the pull-up 3 is what he worked on, but there's just something about the way that he shot those threes. I feel like that's going to be in his bag this season.
And if it is, I mean, he goes from scoring 30 points a night to we'll see what happens and how he gets there this season, because the driving is still going to be a heavy part of his game. He's still going to be physical enough to get to the free throw line. But to add that, especially for the playoffs, I think is important because in the playoffs, you're going to load up to not let Shai beat you. And you're going to count on somebody stepping up. Whereas like last year, for example, PJ Washington stepped up for Dallas. Like he was awesome for Dallas and he had an outlier series, but they were not going to let Kyrie, not going to let Luka beat them as like a sole force. But if you can see that packed paint and just dribble into a 3, that can be another element of an already fantastic postseason for Shai. So I just think that that's been what we've been looking for from him really his whole time in OKC. But it's going to be fun to see this team, Brennan. I cannot wait to watch this team play again. Tomorrow against the Breakers will look a bit different because Mark's already said that they're going to sit some guys on the second night of a back-to-back. But this team is so deep that even then it'll be fun to watch them because there's so many storylines to follow.
Yeah, even without the main guys playing tomorrow, I'm still looking forward to more Dylan Jones and more AJ Mitchell. These 2 rookies have really impressed in Summer League and 2 preseason games. I want to see more from Ooh. So, that's what's fun about this Thunder team. Even when the stars sit, they have a lot of young talent that they're still developing. So it'll be fun to watch these guys tomorrow night.
Brandon, perhaps I can rope you into another post-game show tomorrow, but until then, be good and be good to one another.